this podcast, we will be looking at storytellers, stories, and the reasons that oral storytelling is important in our world today. You would think with all the technology we have available that stories do not have a place anymore, but they are needed more than ever. For in storytelling is where we find truth, we find reality, and we find the heart of what it is to be human. Welcome to the Heart of Storytelling. My name is Alyssa Curtain, and let's go on an adventure. Welcome to episode 52 of the podcast. This week we have Jamie Brunson, who is an American who helps people to tell their stories in Philadelphia. This episode does have a content warning. There are some issues on here that are spoken about which might trigger people into things, so make sure you have a good psychologist or counsellor to help you work through that stuff. This is an interesting episode and our very, very first as a specialist in personal stories or personal narratives, and I feel like after talking to Jamie, I have a bit more of an appreciation for what personal tales can do, and although it's not something that I want to work through or work with, I think it's something that's really good for people to be able to access. Here's Jamie. Welcome to this week's episode. This week we're coming to you from Philadelphia with Jamie Brunson. Welcome to the podcast, Jamie.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be with you down under.
Well, I'd love to hear about your storytelling journey. Tell me about how you started and where you are now, where you've been and where you are now.
Well, I think that storytelling is a part of everyone's life. I think we just don't realize how much a part of our lives it is. Because I've been writing since I was 12 years old, telling stories, and it really was a way for me as a child to speak. Because I grew up in a very traditional home where children speak when spoken to. So storytelling and writing really helped me to find my voice. And so I've been doing that all of my life. Gosh, I guess it's been 40 some years now.
So where is it taking you?
Well, for a long time, a very long time, I did all of my writing alone, and I put it in my desk drawer, not knowing how or when or where I could share it. So for a long time, it sat silent. And I had been working in Philadelphia pretty much my whole life, and in the arts, working in the performing arts. And I received an email that this organization named First Person Arts was doing this project called the Story Museum, the First Person Arts Museum. And they were asking people to bring objects that meant something to them and tell a story on video about the object. And they invited me in, and I had never had that experience before. I thought, this is the coolest thing in the world. And I did it. And then a couple of years later, I got an email that said the founder was retiring. And, I had been working in the field for a long time. And I thought, everything I've ever done in silence or in front of people has brought me to this place. Here's a job where I can do both. I can run an arts organization, but I can also be a storyteller. And it was amazing. It's the first time in my life I've had a job that allows me to do both. And in fact, the better storyteller I am, the better I am at my job.
Mm-hmm.
So cool.
I'd love to know more about the organization itself. What does it do?
So First Person Arts is Philadelphia's original storytelling organization. And what we do in a nutshell is we help people to share their stories and to develop their true personal stories into memoir and documentary art. And then we put those stories on stage as a catalyst for connecting people, for getting people talking. It could be on whatever the story is about. And so, we believe that everybody has a story, and that if you have a safe place to share your story, you can connect with other people in the world. And we see it every day. So we have three principal programs that we offer: storytelling for performance, which could be education, uh, stage, theatrical performances, a podcast, the whole 9 yards. Then we do what we call applied storytelling. And that is where you place storytelling at the forefront of healing, of activism, of improving outcomes. And then the third program is our First Person Arts Festival. And it's the only festival of its kind that only features true personal stories. They can be theater, dance, literature, film, but the one criteria is they have to be true, or documentary art. And I've been running the organization. It'll be 13 years, January 2nd.
Mm. Congratulations. That sounds like a a wonderful, and you've got so many different aspects of storytelling included in that.
Oh, yeah.
I'd love to hear more about the three sections. Yeah, just tell me a bit about each of those a bit more.
Okay. So um, you can come to our organization, and once a month we do a story slam where we preset a theme and we invite the audience to tell true personal stories on the theme. You don't have to be a professional, you don't have to be trained, you just have to be willing to get on stage and share your story. You can take a class with us and learn how to develop your story. Um, you could potentially be put in a curated show. You could potentially do a show for the festival, either your own show or be a part of a larger show for the festival. Um, and you could be called on to tell your story to a group of people around a particular topic. So so the journey is really about empowering your voice and then putting it into the world to help other people.
Mm. And so it's primarily personal stories that you work with?
Absolutely, absolutely. True
Yeah.
personal stories or documentary art. So we've done a couple of documentary films. Um, as I said, in our festival, we either produce work or we present it. So I can remember someone coming in and we presented them in a dance performance. And through the dance, they were telling the story about their relationship with their aunt.
Mm.
Yeah, so it could be, or we had Toni Morrison on our stage telling a true personal story about herself. Um, we've just had a lot of people on our stages that were brave enough to get up there and share and be vulnerable.
I guess with personal stories, there's two ways it can go. It can be like a emotional dumping,
Mhm.
um, and as an audience, that's really hard to be part of. How do you? And then there's the crafted personal story. How do you manage that, or do you manage that?
That's a great question. So the first thing I would say is managing the expectations of the audience, helping them to understand when this is going to be an open mic and you could hear anything,
Mm.
or this is a curated show where these storytellers have been trained and developed. So that's the first thing, helping people to know what they're coming into. But
Mm.
I will tell you, our audiences are pretty incredible. There have been people that have gotten on stage and floundered or froze, or
Mm.
and members of our audience will say, "Take your time. We got
Mm.
you. Go ahead.
Mm.
It's okay." It's amazing. It's amazing. And every story in our monthly slams, every story is not great. Part of the journey is flubbing.
Mm.
I'll give you an example. There was a woman named Jackie, and Jackie would come to our slams, and she would often tell these stories of her drunken sexapades. And I mean, these were encounters in dressing rooms. I mean, they were, and Jackie would, present them and join the audiences laughing about them. And I would sit and I would just watch Jackie, right? Because I understood something was happening. And twice a year, we invite the people that win, because we have friendly judging of the storytellers. So we invite the winners to a show to all tell their stories. And the theme of that event was, how did I get here? And after a couple of years of telling these stories about herself, she finally got up on stage and she said, I want to tell you how I got here. I'm an alcoholic. And I've told stories here about all of these escapades, and they're not funny. And she went on to talk about her personal journey to AA and the fact that she had been sober for a year. And that was the end of one part of Jackie's journey. And she took it with us, the bad times and the celebrations. She got a standing ovation because a lot of people knew her, and she won the title of best storyteller in Philadelphia. And those kind of stories, those kind of experiences are deeply meaningful. When you know you've been with someone along a long journey, and then you see them at the end of it. And I haven't seen Jackie since, because she completed her process with us.
Yeah, amazing. So, I mean, obviously, that's a really great benefit to the teller. Um, what are some other benefits have you seen with people getting up and telling their personal stories?
I'll give you another example. We brought in an Obie Award winning theater artist named Dale Orlando Smith, incredibly talented African American woman with dreadlocks down her back. And she told this, she was developing a new one woman show. And it was about her rocky relationship with her mother growing up in an apartment building that her mother owned, but it was rat infested. It was just a really difficult personal story for Dale to tell. And as is our process, we always offer audiences an opportunity to chat with the artist after the show or with a panel. After Dale delivered this show, a woman in the audience, a well-heeled, blue-haired, privileged white woman, the complete opposite of everything Dale is, stood up and said to Dale, "Your mother was my mother." And the entire audience leaned into this conversation about how difficult it could be, mother-daughter relationships, how forgiveness was important. And the conversation just took this unexpectedly meaningful turn when these two women connected across economics, ethnicity, uh, appearance, everything. And that's what I've seen in 13 years of audiences. What do audiences get? I see storytellers come off stage and people buy them a drink, or they hug them, or they shake their hand and say, "Hey, I've been there. I understand." And it's warm. And some of these stories are hilarious, and some are suddenly heartbreaking. And sometimes it's a flub. Sometimes it's a wash, and you kind of
Yeah,
take it in stride.
yeah.
But that's just one of the programs. We do a lot of theatrical work that is produced and developed, where you know what you're going to get. You're going to get a highly produced piece, or you're going to get an open mic.
Mm. And what have you found, like you've, in terms of building audiences and things like that, do the same people come and did they then go tell their friends about it? How does that work with the audiences?
Yes, yes, they do. Philly is a family town. And so we have a family of audience and storytellers that come over and over again. We also are in a big university town. So
Mm,
there's University of Penn, Drexel, Temple, etc. So 50% of our audiences are new at every event. And then the other 50 are our family.
mm,
And we really feel like family. We hug, we share each other's lives, we reach out, so it really is a family.
mm. Yeah, a very big community, isn't it? And I guess once you've shared a personal story with someone, they've seen a part of you that you can't unsee.
Exactly. You are connected. You
Mm,
are connected. And we very much feel that way. And
mm,
sometimes people come once and they don't come back because, being in a space that can be very vulnerable, you know,
mm,
is not something that we can control. And so some
mm,
people like to control things,
mm,
but for the most part, you know, we continue to build our family.
mm. So tell me about the applied storytelling. Mm,
So we we have learned that, storytelling can help heal people. It can build communities, inspire, provide empathy. So we work with individuals and organizations that want to use storytelling for a purpose. And it's usually to improve outcomes in some way. I'll give you an example. We work with the City of Philadelphia Department of Behavioral Health in a number of areas: suicide prevention, um, the wellness of men and boys of color, different initiatives that they have, because we find that storytelling can help improve outcomes, can like with our suicide prevention work, people that are vulnerable enough to get on stage and talk about their experiences with suicide can find encouragement, inspiration. It destigmatizes the conversation because until you're willing to talk about it, you can't get help. So that would be an applied storytelling project, and we've done those with the city for a very long time. Um, on another note, we work with the nursing community, especially after COVID, because that community had something to say. And we gave them a space to do it, and we gave them master coaching to do it. Um, Community organizations that want to connect their communities at a deeper level, museums that want to give people an opportunity to interact more deeply with art and artifacts. We just did a project at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, which is one of the premier museums in the country. And we created a story game that would allow people to walk into the exhibit, anybody, walk into an exhibit, find an object that inspires them, and then write the story that they recall from the artifact. So it's kind of going back to that first person museum that first brought me there. And we did that because going to a museum can be kind of intimidating, and it shouldn't be. We should all feel like we can go and experience art and let it resonate deeply with us. And so we created this game so that anyone that wanted to go in
mm,
could go in.
mm,
And We did it for that museum, and now we have another museum that wants it. I'll be talking to a third museum. And those kind of projects are very meaningful, very meaningful when you know you broke a barrier down.
Mm.
Because art has really been my way in, or rather my way through life.
Mm.
Has been That's the language that I speak.
Mm.
And so if our work can bring other people through storytelling to it, we've done something right.
That's a lovely idea, going into the museums and working with objects and demystifying, places that people might not want to go or
Yes.
feel intimidated to go. Yeah, I mean, been a teacher a long time, and
I know,
we live
30
near
plus years.
near the sea. Like we live near the sea, and I worked at a school once where we went on an excursion to a maritime museum, and then we went to the beach. Half of the kids had never been to the beach, and we live within 20 minutes of it. And I
Oh,
just couldn't, you we always walk around with these sense of, this is how the world is, but a lot of families, they do, it's not a thing that they do. And I guess your example of the museum is a really great example of bringing people into spaces that they might not want to go, using story as a medium, which is fantastic. Yeah.
and what I really love about what the story that you just told is that unfortunately some people don't get out of their block until they're grown. They
Mm,
don't get to see the world, the beauty of the world that could be just blocks away.
yeah. Yeah.
Kudos to you for doing that.
Yeah. Well, I just didn't know, and I should have known though, because when I asked them what they do in the holidays, they just go to the shopping centre, and that's what they do in the holidays. They don't go to parks, they don't go to museums or art galleries. They just go to the shopping centre because they don't know. And I guess
Right.
this is if you don't know that something exists, then creating a doorway to something is fantastic. I really love that. It's really beautiful.
Well, and sometimes I think that young people that travel alone without chaperones, that approach museums and other places, sometimes the people there think, oh boy, am I going to have to deal? Is this going to be trouble? Right?
Mm,
Instead of welcoming them and saying, hey, let me show you around. We're so
mm,
glad you're here. And I think that's a barrier that we need to break on both sides, you
mm.
know? So whenever we go into like a museum and create a story game, one of the things I always say to the museum partner is, you've got to prepare your staff to receive these people so that
Mm,
they warmly welcome them into your space,
mm,
or so you warmly welcome them into your space. And yeah,
mm.
but
Yeah.
it's a real privilege to do the work.
Mm. Oh, it completely is. I I was thinking about what you just said before about you said the opportunity to be seen, I think is what you said, or opportunity to be heard. Can you talk more about that?
Yes, you know, it's amazing how ready people are to open up if you give them a safe space. Sadly, we just don't do it. And we find a way to have these superficial conversations with each other, like, how you doing? I'm fine. Okay, how you doing actually means hello. I really don't want to know how you're doing, and fine could mean anything. We don't have these deep, meaningful connections with each other, and we have to preserve that. We have to hear each other. We have to ask the questions and be willing to deeply connect. And one of the things that I find in my work is that the quickest way to get someone to open up is for me to open up first. And once you do, you know, um, the floodgates open, because I believe people are really looking for opportunities to be real and to say the real things, because there's a lot going on in America right now. It's a lot. We're more polarized than we've ever been. And that polarization is in our homes, in our families. You know, this one voted for this person and this one voted for, and there are arguments at the dining room table, and it's scary, and we have to listen to each other and remember to love, right? Remember that.
So that goes very well on to the main question, which is I always ask, which is this podcast is called The Heart of Storytelling, and you're working in personal narratives. And you're probably the first person I've had on actually who's just exclusively personal narratives. What is at the heart of storytelling for you?
Uh, mm, my father murdered my mother when I was a toddler. And the trauma of that act. So I was then raised by my mother's family. They took me in and raised. But the trauma of that act was so significant that no one would talk about my mother or what happened or my father. And the more silence I was met with, the more convinced I was that no one's life should be silenced. Because they didn't mean to make my mother disappear, but that's what they did, because they wouldn't talk about her. They wouldn't, this is how someone lives, right? And so I am personally committed to the idea that every life is important and no one's life should be silenced. And I take great pleasure in seeing people have an opportunity to share their stories and their life experiences with the world, because I am of the mind of Joseph Campbell. I'm a student of Joseph Campbell, and I believe that your unique experiences are an elixir for the world. Joseph Campbell talks about how we are all unique, and the life lessons that you learn that are unique to you are actually an elixir for the world. Somebody out there needs to hear what you went through, whether it's good or bad. I mean, every story is not deep, right? But every story has a meaning. And I think that no one should be silenced.
So the heart of storytelling for you is giving people a voice. Yeah.
And evidence of their existence. Their stories are evidence that they lived, and the fact that they lived is important. It's important. No life is meaningless. None.
Yeah. Wow, you're very passionate about that, which is wonderful.
I am. I really am.
And so where do you see the organization going with this, with what you're doing, and the place of storytelling in the future? Like, why do we still need this form?
Well, in addition to the artistic component of it, right? We have, especially since the pandemic, learned that the art of storytelling can be used to address pressing issues. And I see the organization moving more deeply into that. And I'll give you two examples. When the pandemic hit, I remember my vice chair of the board called me and she said, "Jamie, you can't hide under the covers. Get your team together and figure out how you can use storytelling to help people right now." And what an incredible inspiration. It was Judge Ariana Freeman as our vice chair. And I got the team together and we immediately sent out a call for cell phone videos for people and ask them, tell us your stories about what you're dealing with. And we learned from those stories that people were isolated, confused, and needed information. And so we designed a whole series of programs to do just that, because we learned through their stories what they needed and we were able to give it to them. A second example is with gun violence. Gun violence in Philadelphia was at an all-time high. So we created a documentary film on people impacted by gun violence that chose to use those experiences to bring hope, help, and healing to others. And then we took that film and we screened it for 7,000 people in the community. And after the screenings, we did a talk back where we let communities talk about what they're dealing with. And we do that work in partnership with the City Department of Health, Behavioral Health. And so it's an ear for them to hear what their communities are saying, and they provide on the site resources for communities at these screenings. And so we're really learning how story and these all these stories are developed into art, right? So we're learning now just how powerful the art of storytelling can be for communities that are struggling. And so I really do see that. I see us as sharing that knowledge as thought leaders with other people, because, we'd love to see everybody doing it. We don't have to be the only ones doing it. And I really see that. I see us also doing more performances of working with more artists, international artists, presenting them, and local artists as well. So that's kind of where I see us doing more work, developing great art, and really using it to build community.
Mm. I have a bit of a backtrack question, which is, why do you think people don't talk about the deep things unless there's a platform for them? Why is there this, hi, how you going? And that's where the conversations, oh, the weather's nice, or did you see the latest news? Like, why does the conversation stop there? What has happened, and in America or wherever, to stop that dialogue between
I think
people?
a lot of it has to do with technology. I
Mm,
mean, text messaging and online dating and stuff. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't do them, but these things inspire short, quick, transactional conversations.
mm,
And we're not really having places and spaces to deeply connect.
mm.
So I do grow concerned about, these 140 characters, right? How do you have a really deep conversation with 140 characters? And this is the main mode of communication for a lot of people. So I think that, technology, I think we're in a fast-paced, consumer-driven world. You get an email that's too long, you don't read it, right? Right?
Yeah, I agree.
Uh, when I
Time
scroll
poor.
through, exactly. When I scroll through my Instagram, if they don't get to it in the first 3 seconds, I'm out of there, right? I'm swiping down. So I'm as much affected as everybody else is.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you're right. And one of the things I saw the other day was this, if we want to get back to real connection with each other, we need to consume more long form
Yeah,
art. We need to consume books, documentaries, things that are going to hold our attention for longer, because we've trained ourselves to be so short. We need to expand that out again.
you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
And
I can't.
AI doesn't help. AI
No.
doesn't help, right? Because now you've got an AI bot translating for you in correspondence. Oh my God, yikes,
Mm. So
right?
I guess we really do need storytelling more than ever then, don't we? Because of that, that,
Yep.
yeah, for sure. And you've spoken about some really great examples already. Do you have any other moments that you've, you know, really felt have had an impact?
I will tell you one of the most powerful stories that I heard this past year in 2024 was a young lady who told her story in a project around suicide prevention. And she told the story of her attempt to commit suicide. She talked about how she took the pills. She talked about how they began to affect her as she walked down the street. I mean, it was an incredible, incredible story. And at the end of it, she said, there are services, for people who, once they commit suicide or attempt suicide rather, there's a pathway for them, right?
Mhm.
And she said before they're at the point of it, there's therapy. She said, but I'm in the middle and I need help. And we were able to deliver that information to the department. And that was pretty, pretty powerful, because this is a real life person calling for help. And we're able to do something. I will tell you this last one. One of our storytellers named Chris Lundy. Last year, we had an open mic event called Home for the Holidays. And he told this story about how one Christmas, his mother gave him a t-shirt for Christmas. That was his gift. And he was devastated that was all he got. And his mother said, when we get back up on our feet, I'll be able to do more for you. And he hated the t-shirt. But then a few months later, his mother died suddenly of an aneurysm. And by the end of the story, he was telling us about how absolutely beautiful that t-shirt was because it was the last gift his mother ever gave him. And it was there wasn't a dry eye in the house. It was just so beautiful, such a touching story about thankfulness and gratitude and that arc. It was just, we all walked away feeling like every moment of life is precious. And that's what you want for the holidays. So remember when I said the elixir?
Yeah.
His story was an elixir for all of us. And it moved through the room like a warm salve. And we were all just like, telling people next to us, life is meaningful. And, if you were there with somebody you loved, you told them.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's really, really special. I think, those moments that can shift something in somebody or even in a collective, that can be so very, very powerful.
Yep, yep, yep. When you walk out of that event and you feel moved, even if you've just laughed all night, because like I said, every story isn't deep. I just happen to remember these powerful stories. But there are people that get on stage and, one person talked about how she uh, was hit by a car riding her bicycle on a Philadelphia street, and how everybody in the neighborhood stopped and cornered the guy that hit her and called the ambulance. And she told the story about, this is Philadelphia. This is how we are in Philly, so, and everybody was like, yeah, that's Philadelphia, so,
Yeah,
yeah,
amazing. I mean, that's a really good example of bringing community get together with pride. It's a lovely example.
yes.
Yeah. So you've obviously worked with a lot of people who have told personal stories. Have you done any yourself? Have you got yourself up there?
Oh, yes. I've told tons of them. It's funny because if we don't have enough storytellers from the audience willing to get on stage, guess who has to get up there and tell a story? All of us on staff, that's kind of like the initiation. Get up there and tell a story. So yes, and I'm actually working on a one woman performance, a 60-minute, theatrical performance of a story right now. So
Oh,
yikes.
that's
Scary.
exciting. Oh, very exciting.
Oh, it's
So,
scary.
oh, I think you could do it. No dramas at all.
Thank
So,
you.
have you got some advice for people who really want to work in the personal storytelling space, the personal narratives?
Yes, I want to say find a supportive environment. Don't give up if you don't find that supportive environment, you know, at first. We'll always welcome you at First Person Arts, but find a nurturing environment. I told my nephew, go where people celebrate you, not tolerate you. And, work with, get up there. Don't be afraid. Um, Even if you flub, because every experience is experience, so it's okay to do it. Um, and the last piece of advice I would say is it does take courage, but bravery can only exist in the presence of fear. So be brave. What the heck do you got to lose? Really? We
Yeah.
even had we even had a woman propose. She proposed to her boyfriend on stage at one of our
Wow.
events.
Wow. Was that following a story about their relationship or?
Exactly, exactly. We do a story slam called X Files every Valentine's Day. It's our anti-Valentine's Day celebration, and people get up and tell their breakup stories and relationship stories. But this time she got up and she proposed. And
Wow.
he said yes that night. And then when they got home, he broke up with her.
Oh,
I know, so sad.
oh
But at
dear.
least he didn't want to embarrass her on stage.
Yeah, fair enough. Do you find that people, some people when they get up, tell the story, but they need something else. They need professional support and stuff. And do you have services in place for that?
We do. We do what we call the story gym, which are low cost. I think it's like $25, virtual storytelling workshops.
Mm.
But there are two components to storytelling that we work with. One, of course, is the development of the narrative of the story,
Mm.
right? The second piece is performing the story
Mm.
because you may have an amazingly compelling story, but never have been on stage before. And so there are elements of the performance itself that we teach as well. And I think that's what you were alluding to. It's not just about the narrative, it's also about how you perform it. And we have classes for both of those.
Yeah, and so do people, I guess one of the criticisms, I guess, of personal storytelling is um, it's not therapy, but it is therapy. You know what I mean? Like
Therapeutic.
it's
It's not therapy,
therapeutic.
but it's
It's not
therapy.
therapy. Yeah, yeah. So I think you know, when you're taking people and going through that crafting process, do you ever have someone whose stuff is so deep that you think actually you need to go to see someone and work through this, or are you okay to keep them where they are?
Well, it's interesting that you say that because I didn't make this up, but it was so profound that I use it. We tell people to tell the stories of your scars, not your wounds.
Mm.
So the difference is a wound is open and needs
Yeah,
healing, and a
yeah,
scar has healed. So
yeah.
we really ask people, you know, but in that same vein, I studied acting as well as writing in my master's program. And there are grounding exercises that we use
Mm.
to kind of make sure that we close people up before we send them out into the world.
Yeah.
Uh, because I can't always know if you're trying to tell about a wound or a scar.
Mm.
Usually it takes me a little bit to see your
Mm.
reaction and to be observational about it.
Mm.
But that's pretty much the rule of thumb. Tell the
Mm.
scar, not the wounds.
Yeah, that's really great advice, I think, because as an audience member, I'm not a fan of hearing the wound, like it's
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. But I mean some people like that, so it depends on the audience.
No, right. We don't um most people tell the scars, but we're prepared. If somebody gets on our stage and tells the wounds, we're ready.
Mm.
We've gotten training and things like that. But Most of the time, it's a scar, or it's something completely hilarious and light and funny,
Yeah.
So if 7 storytellers get up on our stage each month for a show, maybe 1 or 2 of them are telling a scar story. The rest of them, it's hilarious, it's light, it's funny, it's,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's building community, like you said before.
Exactly.
Well, thank you, Jamie. You've been absolutely fabulous, and I've
Yeah.
got a different appreciation of personal tales now. I really, really have a new appreciation for it and the power that it has. So thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you and the work that you do?
Thank you. It's at firstpersonarts.org. That's all 3 words spelled out, FIRSTPERSONARTS.org. And on our website, you can find out about our storytelling workshops, about our events, and anything else that you want to know about us is there. And we will welcome you with open arms.
Thank you so much. You've been absolutely fantastic. So I really appreciate your time today.
And I appreciate you and what you're doing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And leave me with, what's the weather there today?
Oh, the weather is 30 degrees and sunny.
If you've enjoyed the podcast and would like to support me to continue the work that I'm doing, please head to buymeacoffee.com/Alyssa Curtain and make a donation or sign up for a subscription. This is a passion project, and as such, it is voluntary. So your donations make it easier for me to continue this work. Thank you for your support. Well, that's our episode for today. I hope you've enjoyed learning about storytelling and folktale, fairytale, myth, legend, or personal tales, wonder tales, all sorts of stories, and the art of storytelling and why we really need to continue using it today. You can find more information about me at alyssacurtain.com or at Alyssa Curtain Stories on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube and TikTok. I hope that you can find your heart in storytelling.